Yeah, well, it's great to be here with all of you. I'm Anita Ramaswamy. I am a senior crypto and fintech reporter at TechCrunch, and we're going to be talking about onboarding developers into Web3. I guess instead of me introducing you guys, I think you should introduce yourselves, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit of what you do, what your background is, and how you got into Web3.
Cool. My name is Brian Schuster. I'm the founder of Devman School. What I do is I take senior Web 2 developers and train them in Web 3 technology and then help place them with organizations. I got started in this back in 2016, I guess. I really wasn't interested in the technology, but I loved tinkering with things, and I thought, oh, I was interested in investing, and I didn't really like stocks, so I tried something else. But as I started getting pulled forward into this, I'm like, this is doing things I've never seen possible. How in the heck can they do this? And really spent like a year really studying by myself, and that's what most people do. They basically spend a year working on the technology, really digesting it, and there was a point that I just got it, and I was like, this is going to change everything. I really need to help folks understand this, and so that's kind of what brought me into the fold here.
Awesome, thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taichi, and I'm president of Blockchain Club at Amherst College, which is a small liberal arts school 3 hours north of here in Western Massachusetts. And we have a small community of pretty passionate and ambitious students building and engaging with the community in Web3, and super excited to share what we've been working on and what kind of initiatives that we're taking.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claire. So happy to be here. I'm from San Francisco. I'm the co-founder for Women in Crypto. Our mission is to help onboard women to work in crypto by providing crypto bootcamp as well as recruiting services. Previous life, I was a senior data scientist at Google and Adobe, as well as DoorDash. I'm very passionate about Web3 data analytics, women empowerment, and building a community. Thank you, everyone.
So before we get into the strategies that you guys are using to sort of onboard developers into the space, I want to just take a step back and ask you, like, why do you think it's important to onboard the next 18,000 developers into crypto?
Guess I'll go ahead and start it. I mean, obviously you have scaling things with organizations that if you want to scale out to a particular size, you're going to need more and more developers to go and build out. But I don't think that's the most important reason. I mean, Web3 today is before as I talk about with people, it's before day zero. It's clear that the technologies that's going to make this all click together isn't quite here yet. I mean, you think about the smartphone market. There was before the iPhone came out and after the iPhone came out. They were smartphones beforehand, but once it hit day zero, that's when everything kind of got pieced together. And the truth is, you don't know where that's going to come from. You don't know where those ideas are going to be. You don't know what element is going to make it really go out, that's going to really make it roar. So the reason why we need a lot of people here is because we need a lot of diverse opinions about where these things are from. We need a lot of diverse skill sets, and then we really need them to be just spread everywhere and anywhere in the industry where they can really go and make a difference. Because you're eventually going to have to figure out how to integrate those things, and if you don't have the work going into it, you're never going to get to that point. And so for me, it's really just about figuring out what that innovation is that's really going to make this industry make the turn.
Yeah, completely echoing Brian's point about diversity. I think it's one of the most important things that, honestly, our community in crypto is not there yet. And, getting that diverse perspective into the space is super important. And what we have to do to make that happen, especially for developers, is to create a space where someone who wants to learn about it, who are somewhat interested in it, and these smart people coming from all different backgrounds, they need to have a way to, put their foot in the space, right, in a way. And that's what communities like ours and Brian and Claire's is for, so yeah.
Yeah, just one thing to add on. From my experience working for Women in Crypto, I realized most of early stage startup, when they start hiring developer first because they want to build something first. That's why developers are so crucial in the job market to get hired. But I feel like if you don't have a technical background, don't get discouraged because in the long term, the marketing, the product design, UX design are all well needed in the space. So just hang on there. That's it.
Thanks, Claire. I thought, Taichi, you brought up a really good point about how we're not quite there yet when it comes to crypto and diversity in the space. And so I'm curious to hear from you guys, like, what do you think are some of the biggest hurdles, and how are you, what are some tangible things that your organizations are doing to address them?
So why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure. For me, our club originally was a lot of guys, usually white or Asian guys, who are just like interested in math or computer science, right? And it's been really difficult to get like more diverse group of people because our school is pretty diverse, but then our club wasn't. So what we needed to do was like open it up. We used to have workshops on like Solidity or like how like DeFi works and stuff, and like, that kind of attracts like kind of similar types of people. And what we realized is that like there are people who might be interested in the space, but who might not be interested in the technical aspects of it, and that's completely fine. And it's often the case that they might want to end up going into technical stuff after they get exposed to different ideas within the space that are inspiring. Like the whole idea of like decentralization of power and like what the NFTs give power to creators, those are ideas that many students maybe in political science or like art could be really interested in. So it's important to have that avenue for people who may not be more into like the techie part, but to get exposed to blockchain ideas and the ideas of Web3, and I think that's important.
Yeah, so my story is a little bit twisted. So we started a Web3 startup first, focused on Web3 data analytics. And while we're searching for talent, we find out there is very limited pool of female talent in the space. Whenever we go to conference, we're like the couple Asian girls in the group. We want to change that. And I'm from San Francisco, so it makes sense for me to start there. So me and my co-founder actually started Women in Crypto, just try to provide more like a community in the space. And it turned out that whenever we go to a hackathon, when we introduce Women in Crypto, we got more traction from Women in Crypto than our own startup. So that startup has to go, but Women in Crypto stays. That's how we kind of started our journey there. And actually, statistics shows that for a diverse team, the team can perform much better in terms of productivity, creativity, as well as culture. So we want to bring more women talent into the crypto space, regarding if you're technical or non-technical backgrounds.
So I think when we talk about like organizations and we figure out how do we make them more diverse, I think the first step is really understanding like what's the core mission of what your organization is trying to do. You always kind of have that front and center what you do, and you decide this is the thing that we care about that's most important to the world, whatever it ends up being. I think a lot of organizations do that. But I think what they don't do, particularly when they're looking for folks, is that they still use the same old avenues of finding folks, the same old ways of trying to attract folks, the same old mentalities to go do that, and it really limits where you can get your folks from. I mean, just an example, like, working for a big tech company, right, where we talked about trying to find new folks to enter our organization, and yet when you look at the channels that we used, it was the same ways to go, the same universities, the same groups. And so one of the challenges that an organization has to take is to start branching out to these new pathways. Have somebody that goes out and is willing to say, okay, well, we're going to actually start actively recruiting from, Discord groups instead, or we're trying to look at Slack, or we're trying, a different diverse group to go out there. And it's hard work because it's not this well-trodden path where you're going to the same universities or the same place you went there. But if you really care about getting those diverse voices inside of your organization, that's really the only way you have. And the thing that drives you is, if we really want to be the best, we have to get the best, and we have to tear down, whatever barriers there are. That's the way, at least, I see it.
Thanks. So I do want to zoom out for a second and think about the sort of market backdrop that we're in right now. Obviously, one thing I've noticed is there's been a lot of talk about crypto winter and crypto prices, but at the same time, there's still pretty strong interest from the developer community, at least what I've been seeing on my end. I'm curious if that sort of squares up with your experience, and what are people who maybe were curious about entering this space thinking about now? Like, are they still just as excited? Are they worried about market conditions?
I mean, I'll start. Crypto winter hasn't hit hiring at all. Like, you see variations in prices and you see it go up and down, but from everything I've seen, even when we were going down the hill, back like 6 months ago, I think that you're seeing the extremely crazy prices. Like, I'm back then, it was more common, 6 months ago, it was more common to see $1 million a year salaries, and those would come out. Now the most you see is like, maybe at $750,000. Like, some of those roles are out there, you've seen them, but the prices are still way above average. They're way above where we expected them, where we expected to be. And so from that perspective, as I've talked to companies and organizations and finding folks, I have pretty much 100% confidence we're going to keep going down this path, because most of the organizations are still holding on to their cash. Most organizations still have them. If they would have been down, let me put it this way, if they would have lost capital due to cryptocurrency, it would have already happened, and yet you're still seeing people hiring like crazy. So it appears that enough of these organizations have enough capital to keep whatever we have going for, which means it's going to be a really good market, at least for developers in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I guess just a little perspective that I'd love to hear from you, Claire and Taichi, is just if you have any advice for people who are sort of concerned about the market more broadly, but like still excited about entering the space.
Yeah, so how I think about it is that I think about it from the long-term perspective. I got into crypto personally in 2017, and if you look back the trajectory of how, for example, Ethereum has gone on, the trend is still optimistic, right? I feel like we're like currently at the cycle 4 of the stage where we are actually, it's a perfect timing to build protocols and applications. Because if you talk about this last year, we don't have the capacity and capability. And I think now is an exciting time for me personally, because I think I can really, devote my skill set into the space by building something really interesting. For example, in NFT, in DAOs, in data infrastructure. So I think long-termly, we're still bullishing. So if you believe in your value set and you believe in the product, I think now is actually a perfect time to build.
Yeah, I think I have a little less optimistic view than Brian and Claire, unfortunately. But I think my advice for young people like myself and people in my club is to be realistic. And there are, places definitely hiring full-time engineers or, community builders, but there are also, not as many as you might think. And what that ends up doing is like, if you're interested in the space, you should do it. But it's also important to recognize that it might not be a possible path. And what you do is, okay, you might end up finding a full-time job at a traditional finance place or a traditional software engineering big tech company, and that's fine. And the beauty of crypto and blockchain is that people who are working part-time or trying to learn outside of their job hours, they can do it and they can still build that way. And that's definitely a viable path for younger people who might want to get into it, but who don't have as much risk tolerance as people who might have a bigger safety net, because honestly, like a lot of younger people, they have a lot of debt or they need to finish college, and it's not easy to go into a startup world and very volatile and risky market like this. So, and finding a stable job, that might be the way in which you go into crypto. And yeah, I think that's completely fine, and that's something not many people talk about. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So when it comes to like new developers or developers who are trying to enter the Web3 space, what are some of the most important factors that you think they're looking at in terms of evaluating a project or a company to work for? And in that same vein, what are the areas that you think companies should be focusing on when they're trying to attract new talent?
I think when you look at what I see developers looking for when they're going out into the space, they're really looking for like a safe project almost. I guess I'll explain that, where it's that there's evidence out there that there's lots of projects that have tutorials out there, they have things that are, projects that are going on, they have things that are out there. But I know for a lot of developers, they just kind of feel almost insecure in a way, right? You're going out to a new place, you don't necessarily know about the technology, you're not sure there. And so they're like, well, I want to try this looks interesting, but is it going to be well received? Am I going to be stepping on anyone's toes? Am I going to be doing something wrong, or did somebody already do this? There's a lot of insecurity, so it's almost like a mental game that they're looking for, that they're trying to play against. And I've heard lots of different excuses on why they don't, where it's like, well, this isn't going to pay me, or it's not really worth it, or the technology is too hard, or whatever. But really, it all comes back down to, am I going to do this and this is going to be okay for me? Am I going to be ridiculed for this? Am I going to be this? It's very personal. So when I see projects that are doing a really good job at basically bringing people in, they tend to have these guardrails around the project to actually bring them in to say, here's what we're going to do, here's the path, here's the tutorial, here's somebody you can talk to. If you're worried, here's the community manager you can speak to, and they have that. And they're really accessible, and I see some companies doing it well, most don't, there. And so that's really what I would recommend. What are you doing in your community to help actually bring people in? What are you doing to actually welcome them into your community? Do you just have a bunch of random tutorials, or do you really think through what does the open source developer experience look like? What are the numbers that we're looking for to see how many people need to come in and what you're actually going to do? And it's a big divergence from what we've done before in open source, and we have a lot of work there, I feel.
Yeah, so from my experience working with developers and non-technical people in the space, first question is not what project to work on, is whether they should work in Web 2 or Web 3. That's some question that I run into very frequently. Oftentimes I see people struggling finding good resources to learn Web 3, especially what kind of case study I can learn to have hands-on experience. So that's what we provide, is like basically a hands-on experience for you to first launch your first smart contract using Solidity, so that you have a hands-on experience and you have a community and group of people where you can learn crypto together. So that's one part of the question. And the second part is what the company are looking for. I think in terms of the company, it really depends on the company's needs. I would say early stage Web3 company are most likely looking for developers as well as product designers or UX designers, because they want to focus on building first. But overall, in general, I think people who are looking to get into Web3 or hiring people from Web3, they mainly focus on three parts. One is, are they ambitious and driven? Because it actually is very risky to get into Web3 space. Do they have the strong drive to stay at my company and thrive? The second part is a quick learner, because especially on the front end of the things can change rather quickly. You have to be able to adapt and learn and grow with the community and the technology. And the last part is really a skill set that's we're gonna bring value to the company, regardless if you're a developer, if you're a designer, or if you're a product marketing managers and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to add on is that this market for talent is actually it works very well, in that these people who want to work in Web3, they tend to be pretty ambitious and technically competent people. And what they also know is that they can also see through bullshit, right? Like, they see a company that's, kind of looks like a Ponzi scheme and like selling NFTs. Like, they obviously don't want to work there. And at the end of the day, it's a very simple question of whether these people want to work at, your company, and if their personal views and philosophy aligns with that. So honestly, I don't think anything is that different from in the Web3 world than in the Web2 world. Smart people want to go somewhere they think actually solves a real problem and, has a real solution to it. And they don't want to go somewhere where they're like, it's kind of wishy-washy, like, company that doesn't really do anything, solve any problem, and just raising funds to kind of, start a Ponzi scheme, right? Like, so I think it's a very simple question, but it's also a difficult question of trying to market your company or your, project to be such that it's attractive to these developers by making it something that is worth, worth people's time. Yeah.
Claire, you mentioned a little bit on the idea that Web3 devs should be adaptable, right? Like, things change pretty fast in the space. And so I'm curious about what you all think about just sort of the trade-off between, is it better as a Web3 dev to be really focused and really like going deep as an expert on one specific like language or ecosystem, or is having a broad skill set more important?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think both are important, if you ask me. I would say focus on building a skill set that's more like a T-shape. So you have some wide range of knowledge in terms of the overall industry, what are the trends, what are the new technology that's coming up, and maybe try and do some small little project to dip your feet dirty, hand dirty, sorry. And then the second part is the T-shape, which is really what you bring in the value is get a little bit more deeper into your technical skills, either one specific language like Jira or Rust or Solidity or whatever skills that you already have. Just keep growing and grow your skill set so that you actually bring value for the team. And one way to do it is to participate in the hackathon, do a little side project, or going on boot camps, whatever way you can learn which one you like more, and just keep learning.
Yeah, I totally agree with that T-shaped analogy. Having a pretty good and deep skill set in technology or some sort of area is important, but I think what's also very important is that that bottom T part of the flat getting a wide perspective, right? It's not just skills. Honestly, it doesn't matter if you can only do Rust if you can do it well, but I think what you also need is a good perspective and context of what project you're working on. Say you're working on a project within Rust, and you're like, okay, I know how to develop smart contracts, and I want to make something. But if you don't have that perspective of what you want to build and what you're building is important, then it doesn't matter if you have that skill. So developing that wide interest and trying to figure out what the most interesting project it is that you're working on, that you could be working on, is important. And I'm kind of plugging in my school. My school is Amherst College. It's a liberal arts school. And liberal arts schools haven't been widely represented within the tech scene. But I think liberal arts is the most important thing that tech and Web3 needs right now, in which you have these wider perspective of what's going on in the world and what the world needs and what that problem is that you need to solve. And Web3 or Web2 or whatever, technology is just a way in which you solve those problems. So when you have that skill, it's also important to identify where you want to apply that skill. And I think that's a point that hasn't been stressed much in the industry.
Yep, and actually I agree with the T-shaped person. The only thing I can add on to that is probably a timing aspect, right? When you're early on in your career and you don't really know what you're going to be doing, you benefit a lot from tinkering shallowly in a lot of different areas you think might be useful, right? Where you have an interest in some technology or you think you might be good at something. And what I see people fail at when they do this is trying to go deep too early before recognizing what are those things that are actually going to make you really valuable in the market, right? That's not a thing that you're going to, I don't know anyone who's ever been able to sit back academically and say, oh, this is the area I need to go in based on all the data. It's exploratory. So what it really is that they'll start exploring, go tinker in a few areas, and then after doing, say, half dozen projects, they say, oh, this is the common thread between all of these things. If I need to go big into something, this is the one area because I get paid really well for it, I'm really good at it, I'm very interested in this area. And so really, people benefit tinkering early on, and then once you start to get signals that this is the right area, then you start to go deeper and deeper while still being open to the idea that maybe there's something better out there, and just continuing to work hard and go forward.
So last question, it's a quick one. Just wondering about any specific technologies or ecosystems within Web3 that you've been seeing a lot of excitement from developers.
I'll just say one because so I'm actually getting a team to participate in the near Meta Hackathon 3. There's a $1 million prize tag there, so that's one of the reasons I got my team excited. So we're building a Web3 data analytics tool, dive deeper into the near ecosystem to really see how are we utilizing the nears, as well as in different categories like gaming, NFTs, DAOs, as well as DeFi, to really uncover lots of insights. So think of it as a Doom for near is what I'm excited about. But in a little bit long term, I'm very excited about really building a diverse team. I have seen lots of women-focused or diverse group-focused community coming up. I think the more the better in the current stage, because I feel like we still need a lot of support. And one question people ask is, oh, if I'm a woman or if I'm a white man, can I participate in your group? And the answer is absolutely yes. We want to help each other in the space. We don't discriminate anybody. So if you're interested, feel free to find me on Twitter or just come chat with me.
Yeah, one quick thing. I think what I my group, and a lot of people interested in the space have been realizing with this market downturn is that a lot of money, free money, has been injected into the market, and that free money is going away, and that means that you need to be more selective with what kind of projects you work on. And so people are realizing that there are more subtleties within the market, and especially, for example, in places like DeFi, there were a lot of projects that were returning pretty high yields, but now you need to have more sophisticated projects or technology to be able to return higher rates. And people are realizing that there's a lot of opportunities to do that kind of innovation in that space. So DeFi is definitely a hot topic right now.
I'll be quick. Merge happened. Ethereum network could prove that it can move in flight. So I think the big risk of they can do it once, can they get to sharding, means that a lot of the L2s building on Ethereum and a lot of those protocols just became a lot more viable for solving the scaling problem. So anything building on that is kind of the area that I'm seeing a lot of interest, or you should be interested in it, just because they've proven they can do what they need to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claire, Taichi, and Brian. This was great. Yeah.
Thank you very much.